Recovery means to me is freedom and peace.
There is hope.
Recovery is awesome.
Recovery works.
Recovery is possible. There is hope.
Recovery is possible. There is hope.
Recovery to me means freedom. Recovery is possible.
Recovery works. Recovery is always possible. It's fantastic.
Progress, not perfection.
Recovery is possible.
Recovery works.
Recovery is a journey, not a destination.
Hello and welcome to Montana's Peer Network Recovery Talks podcast. I'm Jim Haney, and I have not done a podcast with you, Andi, in a long time.
Yeah, it has been a really long time.
I mean,
you've been doing them with other people, which is great. But yeah, you and I haven't been on together for a really long time.
It's been a really long time. I was thinking about that. I was like, man, it might be like a year.
Yeah. I can't remember what the last one was that we did together.
Yeah. It's been a while. So today we were going to talk about names, I don't know, vocabulary, words, labels, right? We were having a hard time picking we know what we want to talk about, but we're having trouble categorizing it.
Yeah, defining the word.
Right. So the word, and I don't know where you want to jump in. So I'm just going to do the couple of big ones, the use of the word peers. And what does that mean when we say peer? This is my peer. What does that mean to us in recovery who work in this field? Because I've noticed it's being used very widely now, and it's not always matching the way I define it, or I think most people in recovery or peer supporters in recovery would use it. Am I saying that?
Yeah. Yes. What I'm thinking of is it feels like providers specifically are using a shorthand and just referring to peer supporters as peers instead of peer supporters. And I don't know if that's just because they want a more succinct way of doing that, or if they really don't understand what those words mean when you're talking about peer support. In recovery.
Yeah. I don't know either, but I've noticed that I've been reading it and I've been hearing it. And I was recently at a meeting and somebody brought this topic up, and I was thinking the exact same thing in that moment. And somebody stood up and said, "Hey, I think we need to define these terms because these are being used interchangeable." That for me, as a person who supports others, I'm a person in long-term recovery. The person that I support is my peer, and I would refer to that group of people collectively as peers.
Right.
While I'm not a certified peer supporter, right, because I started so many years ago, almost 20 years ago now, we didn't have training and certification, but I consider myself a peer supporter because people do call MPN for support.
Right.
And we offer support to them. And that's my peer calling me. So that's how I refer to the person who I support. But I've seen the word peer workers or peer services, not peer support workers, which is the profession of all of us collectively. Yeah. And you don't have to be certified.
Right. So there's those distinctions, right? So you provide peer support to people sometimes. So you are a peer supporter. You are not, under Montana laws, a peer support specialist, right? That's the term that is the legal term for the profession in Montana is peer support specialist. So you can be a peer supporter and not be certified, but you can't say you're a peer support specialist unless you are certified.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Same with family peer support
Right.
specialists.
Right.
Only the certified people are the specialists, but you could family peer support someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's I think as peer support becomes more widely accepted and known, I it it seems to me it's just it's an there's just people are just unaware. I don't think
Yeah.
there's nothing malicious sort of to it, right? Like whatever the terms we use then because it makes me think about consumer.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
20 years ago, that was the term
Right.
that was used widely by
Yeah.
people in recovery, by providers, by advocacy organizations, would be consumer, meaning you consumed mental health services.
Services.
Yeah,
And that's still how things are in Montana statutes around like LACs and SAAs, right? Local advisory
consumers.
councils, because you have to have 51% consumer or family member, right?
Right.
And so that's still within statute. I don't hear it as much
No,
as I used
no.
to, but it still does exist in
Yeah,
those places.
yeah. And especially, in particular, I think NAMI, the
Yeah,
National Alliance on Mental Illness, in particular, uses the word consumer to describe the person with the mental health diagnosis,
right.
where I would describe them as a peer.
Up here, right.
Yeah. Providers use client or
Yeah,
patient, right?
patients. Yeah, yeah,
You hear that one too. I mean, a
yeah.
client is the most popular,
Yes,
which I understand. They are a client of the mental health center, the community health center, or whatever. But the use of peers, it's interesting because it makes me think, if an agency uses the word peer, like peer worker, we hire peer workers, do they mean they're hiring their clients to take out the garbage? Like that
right,
kind of thing?
right,
Like where it's,
right,
and what I mean by that is just it's a nominal job that anybody could
right,
do.
right,
They pay them a few dollars an hour. Or do they actually mean peer support specialists?
right. Or peer support services.
Yes,
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
work we do is the peer support workforce development. We
right.
help develop through the training, the advocacy, right? And so it's like as this becomes more well known, these terms are being like interchanged, and it's a little bit confusing. And I think we, as the peers, get to define really
Right.
the how we want to be called because I never liked consumer or
Yeah.
there's ex-patient or
Mm, yeah.
survivor, right? Those are
Yeah.
some of if you go back, you keep going back
Yeah.
in time, those were the terms that people were using, like they survived the psychiatric system, forced
Right.
medication, forced hospitalization, but you don't
Well, and
hear that,
survivors
right?
are used more now in relation to trauma, right?
Yeah,
I've seen
true,
that happen. If you're in
true,
recovery from trauma, a
true.
lot of people will use survivor to
Yeah,
describe themselves, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. Like in the domestic violence
yeah.
field, like recovery in that, you hear survivor a lot. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it raised to the level that you and I started talking about it, and we're like, I think we need to get on and do a
Yeah.
podcast for this. I mean, it's not just like one or two times. I've been hearing it more and more and more. And the other thing I pick up on a lot now too is people using the terms peer support where it doesn't actually fit.
Hmm.
I was watching a YouTube video. And I'm trying to think whose podcast it was. I know there's only a handful I listen to regularly, but they were talking about like the business world and they were talking about colleagues and they used the term peer support,
Hmm.
and I thought, yeah, that's not really the right use of that. That's your
Right.
professional colleague in your business. You're not supporting each other. Your
Right.
colleagues you're doing the same work, but maybe you work at two different companies, or you could be within the same company. I can't remember the exact scenario, but they used the word peer support, and I thought, that's because it's entered the lexicon of
Yeah.
society, right? It's our in our vocabulary now. So we use it and it's not always applied, I think, in the right way. Like, and then for those of us who are peer supporters or doing this type of work, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are peer supporters in things like law enforcement and that
Yes.
kind of stuff, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I feel like those kinds of, like, when I think of peer support, I think more about when we say lived experience, but I feel like that's like a personal lived experience as opposed to I have this experience working with this company and so do you, right? So that's what I'm feeling
Yes.
about that, because you can have police officers can peer support other police officers because you're
100%.
having that same lived experience when you're dealing with
Right.
people and that kind of stuff,
Yep.
or
Yep.
EMTs, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's that emotional piece of it, I guess, that I feel applies more in those sorts of ways than in what you're describing as colleagues in
Yeah.
a business together, right? Like,
Right. It's like I think of if I get on a meeting with the Pennsylvania peer network, that's my colleague because they do the same work I do in Montana, but
right.
they're in a different state, right? Or you can be on with anybody in any state now. They're doing the same thing, but yeah, like it's so interesting, and I pick up on that because you didn't hear peer support or
Yeah,
peers, you didn't hear that just a few years ago,
right.
and now you hear that a lot. And as we get into all these specialty areas, and I think there's more and more recognition of the value of peer supporters, more and more organizations are picking people up and hiring them for different roles. And so there's more of a need to define things because I think it's not, and again, it's not malicious in any way. It's just it's kind of like a misuse of the term. It's like, that's not
Hmm.
really what it is. And we get to define what that is, not the other way around, not the system.
Right,
Yeah, like the state funds peer support services in Montana. It doesn't fund peer workers.
right, right. There are community health workers that do different things, right?
Correct.
That's,
That's right.
yeah,
That's right. And you could go get private money to
yeah,
hire peer workers, but the state of Montana is invested in the peer support workforce and building out the workforce. And there is certification, two categories. But yeah, just the use of that term, it's very interesting. And you mentioned another one, which is lived experience. You hear that a lot now too.
yeah,
People throwing that in to
yeah.
conversations and saying, "Oh, this their lived experience," right? And that's another term that comes right from the recovery movement and us sharing our stories with each other. And this is my lived experience. And that one I don't feel like we get to define it. I mean, I think that's more broadly used, and I think that's fine. But I don't know the peers and peer support specialists.
Well, and we've
You know,
seen, I mean, it's hard for people who have been in the provider realm for a while to recognize those words, I think, right? Like, you've said, you have people come to training, they'll start using the word client because the organization they work for uses the word
yes,
client, right? And so
yes,
if this is your first job in that field, right, you're just going to sort of defer to what the other people around you are saying. And so
yes.
then they come to our trainings and then we have to
Re-educate
re-educate
them.
them, right? But I mean, we had
It
this,
sounds terrible.
I know. Well, we had this recently with somebody who had been in recovery for a while and was working with an organization. And when she wrote some stuff, what she wrote
Yes.
she kept saying peers, but what she really meant was peer supporters. And it
Yes.
was confusing in what she wrote
Yes.
because of that
Yes.
distinction, right? And I think she was
Yes.
using clients or maybe participant. I can't remember what,
Yeah.
when she
Yeah.
was referring to the people that the peer supporters were supporting,
Correct.
right? She was using some
Right.
other term. I can't remember what it was, but
Yeah. 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 And I feel like it creates separation.
mhm,
If I'm a peer supporter and I'm supporting someone, if I think of them as the client, I'm sort of detached from them.
yeah,
If I say you're my peer, no, I'm connected to you because we share a similar lived experience in recovery. Maybe we've both been hospitalized
right,
psychiatrically or, right, gone to treatment or gone to
yeah,
12-step meetings or whatever. It keeps you connected. It's like a reminder that, no, like that used to be me. That
right.
I was that person.
It's less hierarchical when you say
Yeah.
client, consumer,
Patient.
patient. I would even potentially say sponsor. Um, right? Those feel like
Auntie.
hierarchies. Sponsee there. Yeah, thanks. Couldn't think of what
That's
the
it. It's
counterpart to
sponsee.
sponsor
You're
was,
right.
but right.
Yes.
And so those feel like hierarchical, like mentor and
Yes.
mentee, right? Like,
Yes.
because we do
Yes.
peer mentoring, but that's different than
Yes.
peer supporting people, right?
Right.
Like
That's right.
we
That's
view
right.
that differently. And so when you use the term peer, I feel like it levels that
Yeah.
out and there
Yes.
isn't that hierarchy
Yes.
of, I mean, of course, the person who's the peer supporter probably has longer in recovery or
Right.
stable, just because of
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where they are in their life, but they're not above
Right.
the peer, right? You're
Right.
still on the same level.
Yes. Agreed. That's great. The way you said that. That's really great. Because yeah, I just think it keeps people connected. And in training, in the certification training for peer support specialist, I mean, I, you know, first day, I mean, let people talk sort of freely. And then I slowly start interjecting like, oh, you
Hmm.
mean your peer? Oh,
Right.
yeah, that's who I mean, and then, right by the second day, then people are picking up on it and then they're beginning to use the word peer. But in clinical settings, that is what people would use, right?
Right.
Patient or client. And sometimes that is appropriate to use that term. But in
Yeah.
general, I think, like you said, I mean, you want to stay on an even playing field with the other person. And that reminder, right? Because it's like you said,
Hmm.
it's like you can't help but judge where you are in your recovery versus the other person. Even when you go to a
Right.
support meeting, you're listening to
Yeah.
people talk and everybody's at a different place and you're like, "Oh, I'm here and they're there." And right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, whether you vocalize that or not, that's a
Right.
different piece, but like I think human nature, we kind of do that. We're trying to measure
Yeah.
ourselves. But I feel like when I say peer, I'm connecting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm reminding myself also that was me. I went to a
Right.
mental health center. I have been hospitalized, right? Like rather than, oh, that's the patient or the client,
Right.
and I'm separating myself and I don't have that same shared experience, but I do have that shared experience. Yeah.
And we could be in that position again, right?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, that's not that providers can't have a mental health condition or whatever, right? But
Right. Right.
as people in recovery, we could end up back at the
Yes.
beginning of our
Yes.
recovery
Yes.
again, right? And
Yes.
restart and restart and restart.
Yeah.
And that's not a judgment on
No.
anybody's abilities or, anything like that.
Right.
It's just, something happens in your life and now
Yep.
you're,
Yep.
back there. And so
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
hold yourself separate from the peers, I feel like if you do have that stumble or relapse or, whatever you want to call it, I
Yeah.
think it's more detrimental if you put yourself above the rest of the people, right? I'm better. That's not the right word I
Yeah.
want to use, but
Yeah. Yep.
I'm at this level in my recovery, so I'm doing better than you guys. Well, what happens when
Right.
you have a relapse or something,
Yeah.
right? What does that do to your thought process? Oh, now I'm a failure. Now
That's right.
I'm worse than everybody else, that
Right.
kind of stuff.
And we've seen that happen with peer supporters, certified peer
Yeah.
supporters, where they come a long ways and they get their certification and they start doing the work, and then maybe a year or two down the road they have a relapse, they have an emotional breakdown, and then they don't come back to the
Right.
workforce
Right.
because of what you said. They feel the shame and the guilt, and they feel like, oh, I'm not good enough, and it's embarrassing and all that. But that's just part of the recovery journey.
Yeah.
And you can grow from that, and you can build resiliency, and you can learn maybe the early warning signs so that you don't end up going back down that road. But we almost never see people come back
No.
to the profession.
No.
And that's something that I would like to see change for some people who are ready to
Yeah.
do that, right? I mean, you
Right.
have the personal piece, but it's not like, oh, I relapsed, so I can never be a peer supporter.
Right.
You can, and take some
I would
cue.
actually say in some ways that would make you a better peer supporter
It very well might.
because now you have that lived experience of the
Right.
relapse and how that affected your job
Right.
and that kind of thing,
Your
right? And so
life,
then
everything. Yep.
when you're supporting other people, you can
Yeah.
relate that, right? Yep, I had a relapse myself. These are the things that happened to me. Look
Yep.
where I am now. I managed to get back
That's
on
right.
track, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we don't see that in the workforce.
Yeah.
And yeah, that sounds like a LMS course. That sounds like a
I know. Now
LMS
I'm
course.
thinking about why that happens,
that-
right? Like, is
that-
that a personal thing that they don't feel like they can do the job anymore? Is it a provider thing where if they know that you were a peer supporter and you relapsed, are they
True.
not going to hire you again? Right?
True.
Like
True.
now that's opened up a whole bunch of thoughts in my head
Yeah.
about why that
Yeah.
happens. But
Yeah. Well, you know this. I mean, over the years, we've really shifted PS 101, the self-care within PS 101. And it used to be in the early part of the training. And, we went over some self-care things and,
Mhm.
just like any other chapter, but now it's front and center in the skills section
Mhm.
because we see peer supporters, certified peer supporters relapse and not come back. And so now it's a main point of emphasis, and we've lengthened the time, and there's like 3 activities within that
Mhm.
section. And I really emphasize this piece because, it's not, I want to say it's avoidable, but if you have the tools in the toolbox,
Yeah.
you will be able to recognize ahead of time
Mhm.
before you burn everything to the ground in your life,
Right.
your home, your
Right.
family, your friends, your job, your certification, right? I mean, there's degrees of unraveling that happen
Yeah.
in an emotional crisis or a relapse. There's degrees, and you don't have to wait until it's critical mass. If you have a solid plan, you will begin to red flag those things, so to speak, right?
Right.
Or other people will and say something, and then you can take action and use your tools and sort of divert your own self. And, I think it's hard. I think when you become a peer supporter and that hierarchical piece for some people comes into play, it feeds into your ego.
Mhm.
And I'm here to help other people. And I think for some people, they don't know how to take care of themselves.
Right.
They really don't. And so they're really good at taking care of other people, but
Yeah.
we're not peer caretakers. We're peer supporters. We're here to support other people, not caretake them. And I think that the system at large does play a caretaker kind of role with individuals and wants to caretake them rather than helping them build resiliency and
Mm-hmm.
plans. We were just
Mm-hmm.
talking last
Yeah.
hour about APDs,
Yeah.
and if we really encouraged advanced psychiatric directives with people, it encourages people to take responsibility for yourself, make a plan, share the plan. That's all part of the resiliency. And what are you going to
Mm-hmm.
do when things aren't okay? And
Yeah.
that you don't have to leave your career that you work so hard for, lose your family or whatever, right? Like we've seen some peer supporters fall really hard
Mm-hmm.
in the
Yeah.
last few years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
such
I
a
think it's
fascinating topic.
I think it's challenging for peer supporters to use the language that we're talking about here when they're within those clinical settings,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know how to fix that. I mean, we run into that all the time. I mean, we run
Yeah.
into organizations expecting peer supporters to work outside their scope of practice
Right.
or, those
Right.
kinds of things. And so I think that's a really difficult thing, especially for new peer supporters to do, is to push back against those things and
Yes.
correct people when they're not using the correct terminology
Right.
or something like that, right? So, I mean, the very least you could model that, right? You could use the terms
That's right.
correctly.
Yes.
You don't have to out and out correct somebody and say,
Right.
no, that's not a client, that's a peer, right? But you can say the words and maybe they'll seep into
Yes.
other people's brains, right?
Yes. 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 Well, I think like in PS 101, we do the language exercise around
Mm-hmm.
off-limit words, clinical
Oh, yeah.
words, and recovery words,
Yeah.
And I had a class earlier this year, and they couldn't come up with recovery words.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had to really kind of spoon feed them along.
Yeah.
Usually that's the list that they fill the
Right.
whole page. The one that people have trouble with is the clinical words,
Right.
and they're really good at the off-limit words, right? Because
Yeah.
that's all the
Yeah.
slang and
Right. Right.
But I had this class of they couldn't come up with very many recovery words. And it was very interesting. So I had to like go in a lot more depth around that, is like the language, and just from doing the course for so long, it's like the words that typically go in the recovery one are positive,
Mm-hmm.
loving,
Mm-hmm.
compassionate. Okay, that's the nature of those words
Right.
because
Right.
someone's trying to turn their life around, and you need to be compassionate with them. You need to be loving towards them. You need to be
Yeah.
kind and positive. And in the off limits, it's the opposite, right? It's the tearing down, it's the negative words and all
Right.
that. And then there's clinical, which is, all the stuff from the DSM. And so anyway, when we do this exercise, we do 1, 2, 3 lists, and then we begin talking about, well, what do people see in the lists? And so then I have this little piece that I talk about with, as a peer support specialist, you're going to get certified. You have to stay with your language. This is your language of recovery. And the clinicians you work with, they're going to speak in the clinical world. And there's some words that cross over, right? There's words like
Mm-hmm.
trauma, and, right? Resiliency is another one, even the word recovery crosses over into the two now. But that if the peer supporter who's in recovery starts using clinical words, how does that appear now to your
Right.
how does that appear? How does that look to your peer who's receiving services from a counselor and a peer supporter, but you kind of sound the same. So you begin to
Right.
look the same to them because you're using the same DBT and dialectical therapy and, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you stay in the recovery world and you speak
Mm-hmm.
recovery words, they're going to differentiate those two because they're going to say, wow, Jim is really compassionate and
Right.
right, warm and supportive, and that's how they're going to describe you. Where we all know this when we go to the doctor, clinical people are a
Clinical.
little more sterile
Yes.
and appear
Sterile is a good
supportive,
word. Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
just are by nature. They just are because they're not taught to do that. They're not taught to, right, show a lot of compassion and
Yeah.
emotion and these things. So that's how I talk to people during the train after the lists are done, after the activity's done, and just so that they can begin to recognize that, and um and how when people first come in, they'll use the off-limit words to talk about their life. And you'll watch that
Mm,
transformation from your peers too,
right.
because they'll
Right.
swear, they'll cut themselves down, they'll make
Yeah.
little well,
Yeah.
no one cares about me, or
Right.
right, I'm a piece of garbage, or right, I'm
Yeah.
crazy, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you stay with the love words, they will gravitate towards you
Hmm.
because we're just naturally, we want to move towards positivity and
Yeah.
love and compassion, right? And so, yeah, I do this little talk with everybody, and then I can see, the light bulbs start going off in their head, and to why you can't, as a peer supporter, start talking in a clinical way, or you can't say, well, I'm trying to connect with them, so I'm going to use their language of
Right.
F this and F that.
Right.
And, it's
Right.
like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Stay in the loving, stay there in the positivity. And, right. It's just, we were just talking to somebody earlier today, who I said, the first thing I said, like, I love the positivity. It's like, it's infectious
Hmm.
when you're around that in someone. And so the words we use are important.
And modeling that for the peers, right?
Right. That's right.
So if they're using junky,
Yeah.
whatever kind
Yeah.
of
Slang
terms,
stuff.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You can model the other words to use, right? That
That's
are
right.
going to shift that.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's all part of how we engage and connect with people because they're just naturally drawn to that,
Hmm.
right? If somebody's not well mentally, emotionally, they're using substances, whatever, they're going to be around other people who are just like
Hmm.
them.
Right.
And so then they meet you and you're the complete opposite of that, right? And it's like people are drawn to that. And I know when I had my drop-in center, that was a big part of my philosophy in running the program was people, I mean, they literally just walked in on the street from the street, they rode up on
Hmm.
a bicycle, they walked or they drove or whatever. And there's no intake, there's no, so hey, come on in. Hey, how you doing? I'm Jim, let me introduce you to some people, right? Like, can I get you a soda or a cup of coffee or water or something, right? Like this warm, welcoming environment that's not saying, hey, what's wrong with you? Tell us all your symptoms, right? Like getting in your face, like, hey, fill out this intake. You fill out the
Yeah.
intake. It's only 55 pages, like, and it was just like, come up, like, that's literally how
Hmm.
I did it.
Yeah.
And just come in. And then you're introducing them to the other people who are there. And now it's not me and them, my peer and myself. Now it's me and 4 or 5, 6 other people, and you're just talking like normal, like how normal people sit around and talk and have a cup of coffee or whatever. I think that's a huge part of it.
Hmm.
I don't know about you, like you go to counseling, do you ever get nervous? You still get nervous? I get nervous right
Yeah.
before the session.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do. And I think, my gosh, I've been in and out of therapy for 30 years.
I
Why am I
know.
nervous? But I do, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
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 Yeah. But if I'm sitting down with my peers, I don't feel that way.
Right. Right.
I'm just like, hey, these are cool people. They're all in recovery. Like, right? So I think that's a big part of it, the language that we use and how we're using it and to be aware. Now, I also say in class, if you're in a staff meeting, you're talking to a bunch of clinicians, they're going to use the word client and patient,
Right. Right.
like be okay with that. There's nothing wrong with it. That's their
Right.
language. Yeah.
Right. You can still choose to use the language that you want to use. You can still
Yeah.
choose to use
Yeah.
the word peer instead of client in those
Correct.
meetings, but
Correct.
you're probably not going to convince the
Them to use those.
clinicians
That's right.
to
That's right.
use that.
Because I think what happens for, like, I noticed this, being a peer supporter at a mental health center with a bunch of clinicians and then hiring staff, the staff wants to connect to their coworker, right? The peer
Yeah.
supporter wants
Yeah.
to connect to their coworker.
Yeah.
So they start to pick up their language when really
Right.
you just got to stay with your language because you're not a clinician. That's not what you're here to do. And I always found that really important distinction to make. But it's hard if you're the only peer support specialist.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're sitting in a room with 5, 6 clinicians and they're talking DSM and all this stuff. It's easy to start picking up the language
And how those other professions view you, I think, too, affects that, right? Like
true.
some clinicians are not going to view peer supporters on the same
Right.
level with
No,
them, right?
no.
Like,
Yeah, no. And really they shouldn't, honestly.
no,
I mean, you're not on the level of a clinician, but value you in your role,
yes, that was what I was trying to
right?
get at, was
The same way
value.
you value, the
Yeah.
same way you value the admin person who works
Right,
at the front desk, who handles all the little
right.
paperwork stuff that goes on in an office setting. That's like a really valuable role.
And
And
you know that
often,
there are lots of clinicians or other people that work with them that do not value that work at all,
no,
right?
yeah,
Like,
that's a
yeah,
huge role, like in an
yeah,
organization, like that frontline person right
yeah,
there, and they too really need to be using more recovery
yes,
language and not so clinical. But I notice even those individuals pick up the clinical
yeah,
language, the
yeah,
lingo, and it's like I just think all that creates separation from the individuals coming in for help,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This is a great conversation. So if you're interested in advocacy, this is to the listener now. If you're interested in advocacy, we have a new workbook
Yeah.
called,
So the Peer Advocacy Change and Empowerment Program, so PACE. And that's our most recent workbook. We also have a course in our learning platform. For that, it's actually a virtual version of that workbook that'll sort of help guide you through how to do advocacy. And the whole book is full of journal prompts. So they're sort of like assignments, but they're incredibly individualized because we're just asking you to think about the things that you want to change and sort of leading you in a way that you can do that advocacy work for whatever topic it is that you want to do that for. I mean, we've seen that people think advocacy is going and talking to the legislature, and there's just so much more to advocacy than that. And so that's, I think, the main point of that project is empowering people to be the advocates that we need in all levels.
yeah, well said. Well said. You can pick up the book on our website in the store. If you need a bunch of copies, reach out to us, contact us, Um, we need more advocates. We need more
Yeah,
peer
yeah,
advocates.
yeah.
We do. And there's more and more areas. Just had somebody call me recently about individuals in recovery from a traumatic brain injury
Mm,
and the need for advocacy. And they were talking to me
yep.
about it, right? It's not a field that we're really involved with. And immediately I recognize, oh wow, this needs some peer leaders. We need some
Mhm.
peer advocates to step up and do some advocacy here. So if that's appealing to you, check out our LMS. That's our learning platform from Montana's Peer Network. You can take the online course, or if you prefer, an actual book, you can pick up the book on our website. Yeah. Any last thoughts, Andy?
I don't think so.
We hit everything on our pre-list. So
Yeah.
yeah. So check out our Recovery Talks podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're all over the place. This one being video based, you may be on YouTube even doing it, right? I was just listening to a stat on that. YouTube is now the #1 place people get their podcasts.
Yep.
Yeah. Whereas before it used to be like SoundCloud or
Right.
iTunes or one of those.
Yeah.
YouTube is now propelled into the #1 place. So for some reason, geez, people like seeing one another. Who would have thought?
Well, and all of our podcasts are on YouTube, but the ones that we didn't record video for just have a static logo, right? But you can still listen to them on YouTube.
Yeah.
They're also on SoundCloud and Spotify and iTunes.
Yeah. On our website.
Yeah.
So check it out. Thanks for tuning in. And Andy, thanks for doing podcasts with me.
Thank
I like
you.
doing them with you. I like doing the podcast with you. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
There's always hope.
Recovery is possible. Recovery works.
There is hope in recovery.
Healing takes time.
Recovery means resilience.
You can get through anything. Recovery works.
Recovery